Welcome back to Into the Paradox, everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic that's been etched into human consciousness, folklore, and fear for millennia: wolf attacks on humans. It's something that evokes a primal response, isn't it? And to help us navigate this fascinating, sometimes terrifying landscape, I'm thrilled to have Martin with us, a brilliant folklore researcher. Martin, thanks for joining me.
Peter, it's a pleasure to be here. This is absolutely one of those topics where the paradox in your show's title really shines. We have centuries of stories, myths, and cautionary tales about the big bad wolf, and then we have the scientific reality, which often looks quite different.
Exactly. From Little Red Riding Hood to the werewolf legends, wolves are consistently cast as villains. So let's just cut straight to it. How common are wolf attacks on humans in reality?
That's a fantastic starting point, because the reality is they are exceedingly rare, especially in developed countries like North America and Western Europe, where wolf populations are stable or recovering. When they do occur, it's almost always under very specific, often tragic circumstances.
So the big bad wolf is largely a figment of our collective imagination then, or at least a highly exaggerated one?
For the most part, yes. Wolves are naturally shy, intelligent creatures. Their instinct, overwhelmingly, is to avoid humans. We are, after all, top predators ourselves, and they've learned over thousands of years to give us a wide berth. The instances of unprovoked predatory attacks on humans are incredibly uncommon.
That's a relief to hear for anyone hiking in wolf country. But you mentioned specific circumstances. What exactly are we talking about when an attack does happen?
There are usually a few distinct categories. Historically, and even in some parts of the world today, the biggest culprit for wolf attacks isn't a bad wolf, but a sick wolf, specifically one infected with rabies. Rabies changes an animal's behavior entirely, making them aggressive, fearless, and indiscriminate in their attacks. That's where you see a lot of historical accounts of wolves attacking multiple people or livestock during the day, which is very atypical.
So rabies is a game changer. It's not the wolf's natural predatory instinct. It's a disease driving it.
Precisely, and that's a crucial distinction that often gets lost in the narrative. Rabid animals, be they wolves, foxes, raccoons, or bats, are dangerous, but a healthy wild wolf, it wants nothing to do with us. Historically, especially in Europe and parts of Asia, rabies epidemics among wildlife were a huge factor in human fatalities attributed to wolves. Medical advancements and rabies vaccination programs have drastically reduced this threat in many regions.
Okay, so take rabies out of the equation. What about non-rabid attacks? Are those predatory or something else entirely?
Non-rabid attacks are where it gets even rarer and more nuanced. You have a few types. There are defensive attacks where a wolf might feel threatened, perhaps cornered, or is protecting its den and pups. These are almost always a warning bite or a quick lunge, not a sustained predatory attack. Think of it like any wild animal that feels pushed too far. Then there are provoked attacks, which frankly humans are often to blame for. People trying to pet wolves, feed them, or get too close to their young. That's just asking for trouble with any wild creature.
Right, common sense really. Don't poke the bear, or in this case, the wolf.
Exactly. And then the category that truly instills fear, the predatory attacks by non-rabid wolves. These are exceptionally rare on humans. The vast majority of documented cases involve habituated wolves, meaning they've lost their natural fear of humans, often due to being fed, either intentionally or through easily accessible human food sources like garbage dumps or campsites, or in some very isolated cases where prey populations are severely depleted and wolves are desperate.
So habituation seems to be a major contributing factor there. It sounds like humans inadvertently teach wolves to associate us with food, which then leads to these tragic, rare incidents.
Absolutely. It's a critical point for human-wildlife coexistence. When we feed wildlife, we're not being kind. We're actually signing their death warrant and potentially creating dangerous situations. A wolf that associates humans with an easy meal is a dangerous wolf, not because it's inherently bad, but because its natural instincts have been warped by human interaction. This is a common thread in almost all documented predatory attacks in North America, for instance. A famous case, the Kenton Carnegie attack in Saskatchewan, was linked to wolves habituated to human presence and food in a remote area.
That's a really stark reminder of our responsibility. So, historically, looking at the data, where and when have wolf attacks been most prevalent, and what does that tell us?
Well, if you look at historical records, particularly in regions like France, Italy, Russia, and parts of India, you'll find accounts of many more attacks than we see today. The difference? Multiple factors. First, those rabies epidemics I mentioned were rampant. Second, wolves were far more common and lived in much closer proximity to human settlements, especially in agricultural societies where livestock was plentiful and humans were more vulnerable. Also, during times of war, famine, or societal collapse, people were weaker and wolves might have been more desperate, leading to a higher likelihood of conflict. The famous beast of Gévaudan from 18th century France, for example, is a classic, though highly debated case from that era, where a mysterious animal, possibly a wolf or a hybrid, terrorized a region.
The beast of Gévaudan. That's a legend I've heard referenced many times. So even then, the identity of the animal was debated, which speaks to the fear and maybe exaggeration, right?
Precisely. The reports were sensationalized, the animal's description varied wildly, and some theories even suggest it was a large aggressive dog or even a human serial killer, but the popular imagination settled on a superwolf or a mythological beast, feeding into the deep-seated fear of the wild. This period was also characterized by a lack of scientific understanding of animal behavior and a tendency to demonize predators.
It seems like fear and storytelling often fill the gaps where scientific knowledge is lacking. So what changed to make these attacks so rare in Western societies today?
A few things. Intensive hunting and eradication campaigns in the 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries, especially in North America and Western Europe, dramatically reduced or eliminated wolf populations. No wolves, no wolf attacks. Then, as we began to understand ecology better and conservation efforts brought wolves back, we also had better public health, widespread rabies vaccination for domestic animals, and a greater understanding of wildlife behavior. We learned that healthy wild wolves generally avoid us. Our modern infrastructure and less direct interaction with deep wilderness also play a role.
So we've gone from widespread fear and eradication to a more nuanced understanding and in some places reintroduction. It's a fascinating arc of human-animal interaction.
It truly is, and it shows that our perception of a species can evolve significantly. What was once seen as an unmitigated threat is now often viewed as a vital part of a healthy ecosystem, a keystone species even, with a complex role in regulating prey populations. Of course, that doesn't mean there aren't challenges in coexisting with large predators, especially for livestock producers, but it's a different conversation than just wolves are evil.
Let's talk about the specific demographics for a moment. Are certain groups of people more vulnerable than others to these incredibly rare attacks?
Generally, yes. If we look at predatory attacks, the data suggests that children, especially very young children, are more vulnerable. They're smaller, less capable of defending themselves, and might not recognize a threat as quickly. This is also reflected in historical accounts, where children tending flocks were sometimes victims. However, again, these are still extremely rare events. In cases of habituation, adult victims have also occurred, usually when alone and taken by surprise.
It's a chilling thought, but important to understand the full picture. What about the geographic hotspots today? Where are attacks still a more significant concern?
The situation varies significantly. In some parts of India, Russia, and Iran, where human populations live in very close proximity to wolves, and often in areas with less robust public health infrastructure, or where traditional pastoral lifestyles mean more direct interaction, attacks still occur. Often, these are again linked to rabies outbreaks, or to wolves that have become habituated to scavenging around human settlements, which can lead to conflict. There can also be cases where wolves prey on domestic animals, and in rare instances, turn to humans if very desperate or habituated.
So it's a complex interplay of environmental factors, human behavior, and public health infrastructure.
Absolutely. It's never just one thing. It's habitat fragmentation, prey availability, livestock management, waste disposal, human population density, disease prevalence, and even cultural attitudes towards predators. In places where wolves are still seen as vermin to be eradicated and human-wolf interactions are characterized by fear and conflict, you might see more incidents than in areas where conservation efforts promote coexistence and education.
That's a powerful point. It really highlights how our paradoxical relationship with the natural world shapes reality. So if someone listening to this finds themselves in wolf country, what's the pragmatic, non-mythological advice for staying safe?
Great question, and it's quite simple really. First, never ever feed wolves or leave food accessible. Pack out what you pack in, secure your garbage. This prevents habituation. Second, keep a respectful distance from any wildlife. If you see a wolf, observe it, appreciate it, but don't approach it. If you have pets, keep them leashed and close to you, especially in remote areas. Third, if you encounter a wolf that seems unusually bold or approaches you, make yourself large, make noise, and don't run. Running can trigger a chase response. Back away slowly while maintaining eye contact and shouting. And finally, report any unusually bold or aggressive wolf behavior to local wildlife authorities. They can investigate and take appropriate action to prevent future incidents.
That's solid, practical advice. It sounds like the key is really about maintaining that natural boundary and respect for wild animals.
It really is. Wolves are an integral part of healthy ecosystems, and most interactions with them are incredible, often fleeting glimpses of wild beauty. The fear we've inherited from folklore often overshadows the scientific truth that healthy wolves, in their natural state, are not interested in attacking humans. The real paradox is that our own actions, or inactions, are often what create the conditions for the very rare exceptions to occur.
Martin, this has been an incredibly enlightening conversation. It's fascinating how much our fears are shaped by ancient stories, and how much understanding we gain by looking at the actual data and the real science. Thank you for helping us untangle the truth about wolf attacks.
My pleasure, Peter. It's always great to help shed some light on these topics. The more we understand, the better we can coexist with these magnificent creatures.
Absolutely. And that's all for this episode of Into the Paradox. Remember to respect the wild, understand the facts, and never stop questioning the narratives. We'll catch you next time.